Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another video in my series recapping and reviewing every single book in the Animorphs series. Today we're talking about Animorphs 44, The Unexpected. Frankly, everything in this series has been unexpected so far, so this should be a real treat. It's also a Cassie book, so it should be in some ways emotionally devastating. And judging by the fact that there's a kangaroo on the cover, I'm guessing we're going down under at some point. But don't worry, at no point during this video am I going to attempt an Australian accent. We open with Cassie flying around in Gullmorph. She is at an airport. She watches as an armoured truck pulls up and some guys, Marines, get out, put on oxygen masks and open a cargo container. Apparently the Animorphs are there because they heard from somebody, presumably the G, that they are going to be transporting the remains of a bug fighter. Cassie tries to contact the other Animorphs who are also in Birdmorph, but to no such luck. As she tries to get closer to a far-off hawk that she hopes is Tobias, close enough to thought speak that is, a car pulls up, screeches to a halt and four men in suits get out. The Marines aren't super happy that the guys in suits are here, claiming to be CIA. They say they're going to take the box that has the remains of the bug fighter in it, but the Marines aren't having it. They don't want it unless they have orders from their higher-ups. The definitely Yeerk CIA agents say they're going to have a Marine commander here soon. Obviously, they can just go find one that has a Yeerk in his head. Cassie needs to buy a little time, so she does what the Animorphs have started just kind of recklessly doing in the last few books, and she thought speaks, Marines are wimps, at the Marines, who think that the CIA agents have said it out loud. They get angry, and they get even angrier when Cassie continues, saying, if the Pentagon wanted real men, they'd have called the Air Force. Unfortunately, these Marines aren't the type to start randomly brawling with CIA agents. Cassie thought speaks out to Jake asking for help, but nobody is answering. Where are they all? I scanned the scene. Below, 2 pumped-up Marines, 4 alien-infested CIA guys, and at least 6 guns between them. Above, an unarmed seagull. Well, maybe not completely unarmed. As you can imagine, Cassie poops on them. It's the Gull way. The CIA agent who's been the brunt of Cassie's attack shouts, "And a light," and whips out his gun. Not what Cassie wanted, but I'm pretty sure it's what she expected. Cassie hunts for a place to hide so that she doesn't, get shot and she can morph to a better morph. The Marines help her out by starting to fight with the CIA agents, but it's turning into a bit of a shootout, which isn't ideal. Cassie sees a baggage cart come thundering out of the terminal and it stops between the 2 sets of men, and from it emerge the Animorphs in battle morphs. Grizzly Bear Rachel, Tiger Jake, Gorilla Marco, Hawk Tobias, and Cheetah Axe, because he can't be an Andalite morph because there are humans around. Rachel snatches the gun from the agent, but not before he can make a "we will destroy you, evil villain" comment. Unfortunately, the Marines don't know that the Animorphs are friends, and so they also start shooting at them. Cassie is still looking for a hidden spot where she can demorph, not revealing that she is a human girl. It is at this point that Cassie fills the reader in on the whole Animorphs debacle and how we got to this point. I will save you that bother. You can go and watch the playlist, or indeed read the books. They continue fighting. Rachel and Marco trap a bunch of controllers under an upturned cargo container like they're spiders in a jar. "That was almost easy," said Rachel. "Almost too easy," Marco added. Tobias and I circled overhead and dropped. We got company. There are more men on the roofs and they are armed. In classic Animorphs chaos, they know they need to leave in order to avoid being shot at by the guys on the roofs, but the cargo container / spider Yeerk tin is tipping over, the guys are trying to get out, and also they really need to not leave without that bug fighter fragment. But Jake doesn't think they can pull off this plan without dying, so they need to just get out of there. They make for a maintenance ramp where they can safely demorph. Cassie watches as the Marines slowly succumb to the Yeerk barrage of fire. Eliminate. The controllers didn't care about the Marine, they just needed him out of the way. He was the only thing standing between them and the wrecked bug fighter. I had to get him to stop shooting. As I say, we're in something of a season of the Animorphs thought speaking when they really shouldn't be, so Cassie talks to the guy in his brain and tells him to stop shooting. He's distracted for long enough for Cassie to swoop in and tell him he's not going to win this fight. He is unsurprisingly not swayed by the thoughts of a seagull and continues shooting at the controllers. Cassie dives into him as he pulls the trigger and she flies away with one wing wounded. She can hear the Yeerks talking about a bird and Andalite interfering, and she knows she needs to demorph quickly, not just because she needs to escape, but also because she is dying from a wounded wing. She sneaks into the baggage cart that she was hidden under. And at that point, she half demorphs, so she's not visibly a human girl, but she's also not dying of seagull wounds anymore. And she runs across the airport towards the ramp where the others went, hoping that no one sees her and identifies that it's half seagull woman. Oh no, of course they see her, and a controller man surrounds her with a bunch of controllers with weapons. Of course they do. I whirled. No way out. No, one way out. The Marco way. I scrambled into the cart, turned the key, and floored it. Seagull woman heads across the tarmac, pursued by a whole bunch of controllers. There are police cars with sirens wailing. They're very close to being within firing range of her. She Grand Theft Autos her way around the airplanes, dodging 747s left and right. She makes sure to empty some of the suitcases from her baggage cart onto the windshields of the cars to stop them. It's very, very slapstick. She aims for a plane where she can see crew stepping down. It's clearly just been cleaned, the perfect place for her to demorph. Unfortunately, she can't stop the cart with brakes, so she just goes for a full head-on collision. collision. Despite all of this, she makes it onto the plane. She runs to a place that I don't think will surprise anyone. It's the only lockable room. She gets into the bathroom as the Yeerks pursue her onto the plane. She gets back to human form and she can hear the Yeerks searching through the plane, starting with the cockpit. She gets to fly morph so that she can escape as soon as they open the bathroom door. But the Yeerks are onto her, planning to gas the bathroom to stop her from escaping. My fly hairs quivered in panic. The controllers were shooting bug spray in through one of the bullet holes. The bullet holes! Yes! Yeah, they shot through the door first. Things are out of order, you just have to understand. As the Yeerks try and squash her, spray her, do all of the various things, Cassie makes her way through the plane in fly morph. She gets caught by a little bit of fly spray, but she does manage to make it out again. Thankfully, fly spray covered Cassie falls into the baggage cart that she disrupted earlier. So she has to be in half fly morph to stop being trapped by the bug spray. So half fly morph Cassie sneaks her way onto a conveyor belt full of luggage so that she can escape the Yeerks. The fly spray sticks her to a golf bag, which has then got another suitcase tossed on top of it. We've seen the Toy Story airport baggage scene, that's what I'm imagining here. Cassie focuses all of her energy on trying to get back to human, and as she does, everything fades to black. Cassie wakes up, surrounded by suitcases, but thankfully not a half-fly, half-human Nothlit for the rest of her life. She is, however, stuck in the freezing cargo hold of a plane, going to somewhere with the initials SYD. She reads it on a baggage label, it makes sense. She thinks she's going to somewhere in South Dakota, but I think we can guess from the cover where she's actually going. So essentially, the reason Cassie is here is that Axe and Marco heard that a bug fighter had washed up on the beach, or the wreckage of a bug fighter. It was being transported, and the Yeerks want it so that nobody can reveal that aliens exist, and the Animorphs want it so that they can reveal that aliens exist, and all of this led to a fight which led to Cassie being on a plane. Are we caught up? Cassie's not having the best time. It's very, very cold, and she's very, very hungry, and she doesn't really want to steal people's clothes. Her plan is, once she gets to wherever they're going, definitely South Dakota, she can morph to Osprey and fly home. She's tucked away behind some boxes and things, and she's just about to get to a cold weather morph when there's a green flash of light that hits the cargo hold, and for a moment all of the boxes kind of get x-rayed. This scanner, whatever it has touched, also gets paralysed. Cassie only manages to avoid this because her torso is behind like a big box filled with engine parts that defend her from the ray. Her legs have been paralysed though. The doors of the cargo bay open to reveal a bug fighter hovering outside with a Taxxon pilot. My first instinct was to morph small, hide, and be killed by a can of Raid? I don't think so, Rachel's words. If Rachel were here, that's exactly what she'd be saying. They're ready for small. They're expecting you to run and hide. Don't give them what they want, Cassie. Imaginary Rachel is even more right when two Hawk-Bajir armed with bug spray hop onto the plane. The voices of all the Animorphs ring in Cassie's head, and she agrees that she's gonna fight. There's only two Hawk-Bajir after all. She can take them. Cassie morphs to Polar Bear, her most powerful morph that isn't a whale, and she swiftly boots the two Hawk-Bajir out into space. Well, it's not space. The atmosphere. She faces the Taxxon pilot, who quickly starts the engines and gets out of there. Quite sensible for a Taxxon. However, he's probably going to get reinforcements. And his leaving does unfortunately depressurise the cargo hold, and Cassie finds herself nearly being sucked out into the open air along with those Hawk-Bajir. It's tough going, she just about manages to get the plane door closed. She spies the crate of pulverised oranges that happen to be there, and it gives her an idea. If she morphs small, they're definitely going to bug spray the whole cargo hold. She will definitely die. But if they think she already got sucked out of the plane when all the other things happened, maybe she can get away with this. Sorry, Rachel, but big wasn't the only way to fight back. As long as I was shielded from the green light and big enough to survive the bug spray, all I had to do was hide. So first up, she manages to find a route into the actual passenger bit of the plane itself. She gets ready to enact the plan, hefting some of those engine crates around so that she can defend herself from the paralysing ray, and she also places some gouge marks in the door of the plane so that it will look like she got sucked out. She gets back to human morph and then puts on a whole bunch of passenger clothes, not feeling so bad about it now that the whole cargo hold's been messed up anyway, in order to stay warm. She's made herself a little camp out of everyone's luggage, and she gets ready to face the Yeerks again. Sure enough, the paralysing green light comes back along with a spray of bug spray into the cabin. She speedily heads up the ladder towards the passenger portion of the plane, hearing behind her the sound of a human controller getting onto the plane. The human woman voice tells them to keep looking as she can see something on the sensors. She manages to shove the panel that gets her into the passenger bit up. It makes a loud enough noise that the controllers below hear her, shout Andalite as they always tend to do, and chase her onto the plane. Cassie, always the smart one, grabs a cup of scalding coffee from the hand of an air hostess and tips it down the hole, hurting the controllers below. It's much like you would use boiling oil in a medieval castle. Unfortunately, they do still fire Draken beams after her, so I don't think it was quite as debilitating. The only way to hide is in plain sight. No pun intended there. So she grabs a blanket, throws it over herself, and pretends to be frozen stuck in a seat, like she's just a normal passenger like everyone else. Cassie then has to sit perfectly still as the human controller instructs the Hawk-Bajir to first up stop firing their Draken beams willy-nilly, or they're all going to die inside the plane, and also to figure out where indeed this Andalite is hiding. They thump around the cabin for a bit. Cassie tries to keep as still as possible, and it seems like everything's going to go alright when they say, hang on a moment, we could just turn the Draken beams way down so they're not going to kill people, and shoot along this aisle until we find out who moves, because they won't move if they're paralysed, but they will move if they're Cassie. There's absolutely no way Cassie can stay still for this, and the Hork-Bajir are moving aisle by aisle through the plane. How to deal with this? Well, when the Hork-Bajir comes close, Cassie tries to acquire his DNA in order to stop him from attacking her, but it doesn't really work because there are other Hork-Bajir and they see her do it. Diving to avoid Draken beam blasts, which are definitely a little bit more lethal now, Cassie manages to grab the Hork-Bajir who is closer to her's Draken beam. She hasn't realised that she's knocked that back up to full power, and she full-on incinerates a Hork-Bajir on that plane. She runs through the plane aiming to get out the way she came, but the human controller spots her. Though to be clear, she thinks that the Andalite has morphed to a human child in order to hide. Cassie could shoot the human controller, but she can't bring herself to do it. Instead, she bargains on the fact that the Visser wants her alive. That hesitation is all that Cassie needs to open the plane door and leap outside. Now, I don't want to shock you, but Cassie's plan does involve morphing to something with wings. I know, revolutionary. However, there are two bug fighters, both with pilots, who will see her morph from human to bird, and they will know that she is in fact a human. They will put the pieces together. They finally will. Cassie still has a Draken beam though, so she fires it at the plane, incinerating the pilot, giving her a chance to morph to Osprey. As she begins to fly, there's an orange flash, and the human controller has taken control of one of the planes and is chasing Cassie now. All Cassie can see below her is barren red desert, and there's no place she can hide from the shots of the bug fighter. At last, she comes upon a ravine which allows her to lose it. She quickly demorphs, gets to flea morph, and buries herself in the sand to hide from the Draken beam blasts. While this is going on, Cassie has the existential crisis that we all knew she was going to have about killing those Hork-Bajir. It's fairly self-flagellating. You can read it if you want to. Now, one of the Chi was projecting a holographic image of me, so real my own parents wouldn't notice the difference. The Chi was eating my meals, going to my classes, helping my dad with the animals, kissing my parents goodnight, and also doing my algebra homework. So there was a tiny upside. Meanwhile, I was a flea, hiding in the dirt, and I didn't know where. I know where though, and I think you do too. Suspecting she is close to the 2-hour mark, Cassie gets out of flea morph. There's no sign of the bug fighter, just a big stretch of nothing. And she pulls herself out of the ravine. That's when I heard the voice right in my ear. They're gone. It's a kid and his dog. He reassures her that they are alone, which I don't think would reassure me if I was in a strange place wearing just a leotard, but apparently it comforts Cassie. Lost, he laughed again. The bird girl who can change into a bug is lost. No worries. Now you're found. He climbed to his feet. I'm Yami, and I'll be your guide for the evening. He smiled. I like to say that. One of my uncles is a tour guide at Uluru. I have a feeling that this book, when I wrote these notes, I've read this. That's the lie. We're not reading this live. This is going to be a little bit like when we first met the polar bear morph, but let's reserve judgment and see how we go. Yami saw everything, both the morphing girl and the spaceship. The spaceship was a surprise to him. The morphing girl, surprisingly not. The reason being, he explains as he takes her to a sacred spring which was found by their ancestors, is that the spirit ancestors changed themselves into rocks and mountains, etc., and they probably also changed themselves into fleas, so clearly Cassie is tapping into that. It is at this point, at the spring, he shows her a herd or a mob of kangaroos, which is when Cassie realises, yeah, I'm not in South Dakota. Charlotte the dog growls at the roos and begins to chase them, despite Yami telling him not to. The dog chases them nonetheless and gets a good kick for good measure, which I'm pretty sure could kill a dog, so maybe the roos are being a bit gentle. The humans and the dog follow the sound of thumping and they find a female kangaroo stuck in a fence. Cassie acquires her DNA to calm her down as they slip her out of the fence and save her and her Joey. Yami smiled, his sideways smile. You have a special way with the kangaroos, he said. Maybe the bird girl wants to change into a roo next time instead of a flea. He laughed. I laughed too. Yami thought turning into a kangaroo was a pretty funny joke. I didn't tell him the joke was now entirely possible. So we have a bit of a time jump and Cassie wakes to the sound of a man laughing. She's sleeping on a bench in Yami's porch, basically. She's already far too warm, but they made it to Yami's outstation where he lives, and she promptly fell asleep. She heads on over to where Yami is sat with his family, and he tells her that his grandfather would really like to meet her. The grandfather laughs at her. They all seem to be getting along fine. Apparently her appearing in the creek bed that is the root of the sacred stream that leads to the sacred spring, or something along those lines, is all good for him. Like, that's a good sign. That's a good omen. Let's just keep going. Yami explained it to me. My grandfather's greatest fear is that the old traditions will disappear. He works very hard to teach us the ways of our ancestors. He thinks you are proof that he is doing well. I'm a little bit uncomfortable with this. I don't know how much research they did into actual Aboriginal practices, but let's just, remember that it was the year 2000 when this was written, or published indeed. It was probably written before then, and it wasn't okay then, but you know how it is with these books. The best part about this is that Cassie gets new clothes, which are less stained and more suitable for the outback. Cassie asks Yami over a snack of witchy grubs if she can use their phone, but he says, no, we don't have one, and you could have used our two-way radio, but it got blown up yesterday. Yeah, the bug fighter shot that down. I took a deep breath. And I know I must seem like a total idiot to you, just falling from the sky and demanding phone service. It's just that nobody knows where I am. I'm not even sure where I am. I know where you are. Now Yami touched my arm. You're in the Pity Spring community, he explained. Northern Territory, Australia. He smiled. Not South Dakota. And he tells her that if she wants to get to the nearest city where she can use a phone, she can ride along with the postman, who will be back in 6 days. She lies back, getting ready to spend the next 6 days here before she can even contact people to try and get home, and she hears the whir of an aeroplane overhead. She goes out and waves her arms at the small plane, but it doesn't stop. Tourists, Yami scratched Charla's head. You'll see them all morning flying in that direction, then all evening flying back the other way. Waving won't make them stop. They'll just snap pictures of the charming natives and fly on. This is unpleasant, but it does prompt Cassie to learn that they are flying in from Alice, which is a town that's only about 100 kilometres away. Cassie, the girl, couldn't get that far, but if she was a kangaroo, she could probably manage it. But even then, she'd have to wait until nightfall to travel that kind of distance. While she's waiting around, Yami's grandfather comes out and gives Cassie a boomerang, which he has carved himself, and he shows her how to throw it. But this is the kind of boomerang that doesn't come back. This is a boomerang for hunting and killing. After a botched attempt at throwing a boomerang, Cassie goes and talks to Yami's grandfather, who has a wound on his leg. It's where he cut himself on his brand new carving tool the day before. That carving tool? Yeah, it's a piece of the bug fighter. I stared at the injured leg. I'd helped my dad deal with a lot of animals, but I'd never seen an infection get this bad this fast. Maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe a chunk of bug fighter could spread weird alien diseases. Clearly the foreign metal had caused a horrible reaction in Yami's grandfather. They need to get Yami's grandfather to the hospital, and Yami says, hey, we can use the flying doctor service, where they fly in a doctor. It's what it sounds like. If only the two-way radio hadn't been destroyed. Yami's family get to work caring for the grandfather, and Cassie tells Yami that she's going to morph to kangaroo and go and get help. He urges her to wait until sunset, otherwise there's no way she'll make it in this heat. As the day wears on, the grandfather gets worse and worse. I really wish we knew the grandfather's name, by the way, but it never gets said in the book. He asks for Cassie's help and she promises to help him. She's extra gonna go because she's shocked to see how bad his leg has got that quickly. She wakes Yami up and tells him that what they need to do is amputate his grandfather's leg now, and then she can go and get help. She's helped with animal amputations before, and this must be the same, right? Thankfully, she has a handy morph that can help. A Hawk-Bajir blade is definitely strong enough to cut through a leg. After she morphs, Yami is understandably terrified, but Cassie reassures him through Thoughtspeak that it's all going to be okay. She can handle this. They scrub up and get ready to amputate. I'm going to leave out the details of the operation because it made me feel very queasy, but if you want to read it, you can read the book yourself. The grandfather stirs and drops the piece of bug fighter, and Cassie notices a shadow crossing the room. Vista 3's blade ship hovered over the brush. A port on the bottom of the ship yawned open, and a Taxon dropped out onto the red Australian plain. More controllers follow, the usual crowd armed with Draken beams. Cassie makes sure Yami and his family have gone far away, but Charla the dog and the grandfather are both still here. Vista 3 threatens to annihilate everything within a square mile unless Cassie gives herself up, and there's absolutely no way Cassie can fight off all of these controllers. They're here because of me. No, Yami's grandfather touched my arm. I looked down, startled. He drew a sharp breath, his face twisted in pain, but his eyes stayed bright and alert. They're here because they're evil. He tells her that regardless of whether she was there or not, evil would have eventually come here, because it's evil. Cassie decides that she's going to get to a morph that we all knew was coming. It's kangaroo time. Thankfully, kangaroo paws are apparently dexterous enough that she can also pick up the gifted boomerang and tuck it into her pouch. I don't think that's how kangaroo pouches work, but we're just gonna let it happen. Making use of the huge jumping power of the kangaroo, Cassie leaps into the air and kicks a Taxon right in the... well, they don't really have body parts. It doesn't go well for the Taxon, suffice to say. This leads to the other Taxons getting distracted and having a quick snack, which lets Cassie get further away. She's heading towards the Sacred Spring. I don't think she's intentionally taking them towards the Sacred Spring because it's a Sacred Spring, because I think that would be a little bit rude. It's really the only route she can take. Cassie is pursued by the Yix, including some very hungry Taxons who are no longer distracted, and at the spring she meets that mob of kangaroos, including her genetically identical twin. Draken beams fire and the kangaroos flee, the females moving much quicker than the males. We learned earlier that kangaroos can drown things, and that comes into play here. I didn't include it then because doesn't feel relevant at the time, but at this point the kangaroos, especially the male kangaroos, start drowning the controllers. I didn't know that was a thing kangaroos did, and I don't really want to fact check it. And I also think it's just like a little bit off to explode Taxons in a Sacred Spring. That makes me uncomfortable. A Hawk-Bajir aims his Draken beam at Cassie, but is stopped by being hit in the head by a boomerang because Yami and his uncles are here to help. Cassie desperately tries to steer the Yix away from the humans so that they don't get hurt. And then Charla the dog is at risk of being shot by a Draken beam, so Cassie tries to defend him and gets her tail chopped off by a Hawk-Bajir blade in a nice mirroring of the amputation we saw earlier. But the dog pays Cassie back for her sacrifice and manages to tear at the throat of a Hawk-Bajir in such a way that Hawk-Bajir is not going to mess with dogs ever again. She gets towards a boulder older where she can hopefully do a bit of a sneaky demorph. And then she hears the buzz of one of those tourist planes. No, two tourist planes. Visser 3 spots them too and orders the troops to retreat. After all, the whole point of this is that they don't want humans to know that the Yeerks exist. So if they're there fighting in all of their Hawk-Bajir and Taxon glory, the whole thing is moot. Visser 3 and his cronies, they hop onto the blade ship, they zap away all the remnants of the battle, and they flee. Someone new has arrived and is telling Cassie to demorph. It's one of the Chi, the android called Lourdes. Apparently she managed to sneak aboard the Yeerk blade ship, and she has come to rescue Cassie and bring her home. As she demorphs within Lourdes' magical hologram that protects her from being seen by the Visser, Cassie tells Lourdes to call for the flying doctor and then passes out. Okay, time jump. We cut to the gardens, which is obviously the zoo, back in the Animorphs' hometown, and Rachel is upset with Cassie because Cassie said she wanted to go shopping, but what she meant was that she wanted to go to the zoo and buy a postcard of a kangaroo. Also, while we're here, Cassie asks after the state of the Marines that we met at the start of the book. The official story is unauthorized absence. The Marine Corps says 2 Marines hijacked an armoured truck loaded with sensitive Defense Department research. The Marines, the truck, and the guys who were supposed to be driving the truck all disappeared into the mountains. The Marines dropped the armoured truck guys off in the parking lot of some roadside tourist attraction, and no one has seen them since. So I guess we're just like drawn a line under that plot point. This whole book really feels like the last 2 pages were really tacked on at the end. So basically neither NASA nor the Yeerks have the remnants of the bug fighter, which is good, I guess, probably, all around. Cassie's feeling a little bit guilty for having boomerang lessons with Yami while Jake was pining after her, but you know what? It's fine, I doubt we're going to meet him again. Axe looks at the postcard. He's concerned about the fact that the kangaroo seems to have 2 heads. They explain the whole thing about a kangaroo pouch to him, and that's okay. And as a final act of the book, Cassie sends the postcard to Yami with no message in case it gets intercepted. It just says, no worries. And yeah, it's a weird ending to the book. It comes through very, very quickly and is sort of just like, and then it ended and everything was fine, don't ask any questions about this ever again, which is often how that works, I guess. And that was Animorphs 44. I'm sorry about all the camera angle changes. My battery kept dying. It will continue to die, I suspect, as the day wears on. I just need to leave it to charge for a little bit. It's fine. It's fine. I hope you enjoyed this. As ever, if you want to come chat Animorphs, I have a dedicated Animorphs channel on my Discord, which is linked below. Thank you so much to my patrons who support the channel and get videos like this early, and also bonus content and various other things. If you would like to join their number, that's linked below. Thank you so much for watching. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. There's gonna be some bloopers now. Cassie needs to buy a little bit of... Rachel snatches the gun from one of the CIA... Rachel snatches the gun from the CIA agent. My camera battery's gonna die. But my other camera battery isn't charged. My camera battery's dying again. I'm just gonna have to stick with it. Father comes out and gives her a bambaroo. A bambaroo? That's not the word.